SAHETI's journey would best be described as a journey of persistence, courage, determination. I think it's also a journey of advocacy. It's not just an ordinary school, it's extraordinary.
Documenting the history of the school is also about documenting a part of the history of the Greek community in South Africa.
So it's one continuous story, a journey that's passed on from generation to generation.
The narrative changes, the narrative continues, the narrative grows. And with every generation there's a sense of pride, a sense of development, and narratives need to be said and need to be told with great passion.
Everything was building up to when the school was to be formally opened, which was January 1974. The bus arrived, probably a bit late. The parents were there. They were hesitant. Are they allowed to come into the school? Or do they just drop them off and leave?
There was a lot of uncertainty, a lot of excitement. The school children did not even have uniforms yet. So they started school off in normal clothes and the uniforms only came later on. So it was not even thought of, They just wanted the kids to be there and they wanted it to start.
The children were, of course, very excited. We had very few pupils at that stage. They were absolutely, perfectly disciplined. Wonderful.
The parents that we had coming from Yeovil in the inner city, and Berea and Hillbrow, they would come to the Greek Sporting Club, which at that time was the only part of the SAHETI ground that was operated, and that was the only time they would see greenery and play sport. Tennis was very popular at that time, so they could see the school being built. They saw the facilities of the Greek Sporting Club, so they married the two. And that's how we managed to convince the 53 parents of the 53 children that arrived on the first day. And it worked. I can safely say we were successful.
The Greek presence and the Greek history in South Africa goes back about 200 years. I would describe the first migrant wave to South Africa as Evangelos Manzeris, the historian who first documented the Greek history in South Africa, as Africa being a country loved more than women.
And obviously, the economic opportunities of the land attracted Greek migrants who were seeking their fortune, their El Dorado.
The first lot of immigrants that came went into the mining industry. My grandfather came to South Africa in 1908. They all came out with one aim: to improve their economic standing. The second lot went into the cafe business, where at that time in early 40s and 50s and 60s, they said on each corner you'll find a Greek cafe. My parents had one in Mayfair West where I was born, and it was their dream that their children would go to university.
And so there you're beginning to see that shift to what you have now in terms of South Africans of Greek descent, which is, a significant professional class, business class, big businesses. The cafe, the tea room at another level.
Funnily enough, many of those Greeks actually said, we'll go for a few years, like 3 or 5 years, we'll make some sort of income and then go back home. Well, some of them were still around to tell the story.
And of course then they needed wives, and they wanted Elenides, Greek wives. And that's where the migration starts to increase. And of course, once the brides all arrived from Greece, they went on and they had families.
And because of the fact that they actually remained and made this their home, they organized their communities, they organized their afternoon schools, they organized their churches, and the community grew and developed. When we talk about segregation in South Africa, I don't think we actually understand how deeply ingrained it was. I remember growing up in Malvern and actually being called a bloody Greek to my face a couple of times as a child. And then, of course, when SAHETI opened and I came to SAHETI, I found a whole lot of other bloody Greeks, which was wonderful.
And so it was a safe space, but also a space that wasn't closed off.
Here we had a world-renowned human rights lawyer, and the way he conducted our meetings, although a lot of things were open for discussion, we were directed down a certain path, and his biggest battle at that time was to convince the oldies on our board that we got to allow everybody to come to SAHETI, and it was not going to be a parochial school.
George Bezos had the vision of a South African Greek school, a South African Greek school that would actually prepare Greek children and non-Greek children to become useful citizens of South Africa.
There's a wonderful story about the interview to recruit the first headmaster of SAHETI.
We interviewed people to be our headmaster. Eventually we settled on Morgan Ellis, which was God-sent at that time. And the question that George Bezos asked him that swung it all around was, would you bring your children to SAHETI?
And he said he would never want to be at a school and to lead a school where his kids weren't able to come. So even from then, it was the thinking that this was not going to be a closed-off community ghetto school. This was going to be one that embraced South African geography, its South African identity as well.
The early years of SAHETI were absolute organized chaos. It really was a wonderful place. It was an exciting place. Lessons were very frequently held under the trees, firstly because we were short of classrooms, but also because it was so conducive, especially, for example, English lessons that dealt with poetry.
It was a school that offered the child freedom. There was no doubt about that. And that's what really appealed to me.
The architecture itself was exciting, challenging, but everything about the school in those early days was different. It was an open plan school.
So the one classroom led into the other, led into the other. The space that we're in at the moment actually was 3 classrooms.
And I can distinctly remember the particular teacher standing with a group of students because they had their own worksheets, another group of students at the other end of the table, and all the way around the classroom, where because the child was an individual and you wanted to develop that potential, that child worked together with the teacher at their own pace and their own level.
And because the school was so new, we couldn't prove that the school had brilliant sports results or brilliant academic results. So we actually built the school up on our cultural activities.
We would give a great emphasis to the celebration of the Greek national days. When we doing the 25th of March or the 28th of October, the whole community were enthusiastic about it and what we were able to present.
The other special thing about SAHETI in the beginning was there was no money to build a hall, and drama being a big thing in ancient Greek life and the Greek tradition needed to be given a space. And of course in Greece it happens outdoors. So that's how the Alumni came into being, that originally was the hall, and it was only problematic if it rained, which it always did it in April when they did their Shakespeare and their Greek play.
You almost sometimes thought you were in Athens in one of the magnificent amphitheaters in Athens. We loved winning. We loved being excellent in what we were doing. And it evolved like that because the students were happy to be involved. Because of being involved in drama, they grew in confidence by getting up onto the stage, reciting soliloquies, being in the Raps Play Festival, being in the house plays.
And my own idea about indoor, outdoor, nature being very accessible and included, and the light and the sun and the seasons being very much part of being alive was built into the way that school was put together.
The next stage was a fairly uncomfortable stage. We didn't have the classrooms that we needed. High school teachers expect to have their own home base, and we needed to provide classrooms quickly.
First of all, there wasn't money to build or to extend. And then the founders or the pioneers of the idea, they did a lot of fundraising. During the weekends, they were going around the area in Centerwood to collect money. And some opened their doors, others shut the doors to their faces, but they didn't give up.
And so we auctioned the classrooms and decided that whoever could contribute to the auction would have their family name written on top of the classrooms, and we still have those names.
Fundraising extended to the Ladies Committee, which at that time was ably led by Lula Balasas. She came up with this great idea of having a debutantes ball, the first one being in 1971.
They were a team of incredible women from the Greek community, and they actually managed to raise an astronomical amount for 1971, 10,000 Rand, in order to put towards the SAHETI building project. So amazing.
That was a big challenge, but thanks to the Greek people, of the Greek community, what can I say? That's why I used to say to the children, the school belongs to you. There are no owners of SAHETI, it is yours. And you need to love it like you love your eyes, that's a Greek expression, because you are going to inherit it.
"1996 was a very special year at SAHETI. 2 years after the general election, and Nelson Mandela, we knew, had a friendship with George Bezos. That was known. And we always wondered if and when Nelson Mandela would be able to come to SAHETI. But it was really quite a dream.
It happened in this hall, and he was sitting here with the rest of the staff and the children downstairs. And we were all waiting to hear what he had to say. So when he came to the microphone, he said, I was studying at the same time with Mr. Bezos, but I didn't finish when he finished because I had to repeat every year twice in order to come to the same level as he was. And then he says to the children, you must keep in your mind that it doesn't matter how many times you fall. What it matters is, every time you fall, you need to get up and continue.
You are our most valuable asset. You are the leaders of tomorrow. You have the opportunity. Please use it. Just remember that the greatest glory of living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time you fall.
The kids crowded around him, they were hugging him, and he almost went out of his way to embrace them all in a sense. And I remember at one stage, I was standing rather close to him, and he turned around to me and he said, did I shake your hand? Let me shake your hand.
And people spoke about it for days and days and days afterwards. And I think it did a lot for South Africa and for our community, because This was the community that was entering into a new phase of South Africa.
We were preparing the children for the change that was going to come. And we were not propagating, we were doing very slowly and gently, but we were passing what ideas we had to pass. For example, when I was teaching the speech that Pericles had given on the occasion of the first dead people in the Peloponnesian War, he talked about democracy. He talked about Athens and what it means to be a democracy. Then, it was Pericles that I was teaching, but it was democracy that I was promoting. That's why I believe that the school was built at the right time.
My name is Providence Mgomezulu. I'm a SAHETI alumni. I was born in 1973 and I did my primary school in Soweto. And when I had time to go to high school, that's when I opened a newspaper, and then there was an advert relating to a scholarship or a bursary for people to get an opportunity to attend high school at SAHETI. And me and my dad, we applied and an interview was set. We came here, and when I came to SAHETI, I was like the first black person within the whole of high school. That year in 1987, there were other black children, but they were in primary school. So it was exciting, but it was also a very unnerving experience because from my perspective, I was worried about, will I be accepted? I remember in 1990, outside in the community, there was still a lot of violence. There was unrest at home and in the townships, and then when I get to school, there was tranquility and peace and everything. So what then I just did to myself, I learned to compartmentalize for the sake of making sure that I don't disappoint in terms of not utilizing this opportunity that I've gotten as a black person to attend SAHETI. I think one of the biggest values that SAHETI inculcated in my life, it's mainly about the values of community, the values of participating in the community life. And subsequently, when it came time for me to start a family, I brought my kids here. My son, Akona, finished his matric last year. At the same time also, you grow a lot of friendships. Some of the friendships I had here are generational. What I mean by generational is that some of my best friends, while I was here at SAHETI, our kids now best friends.
Now it's not regarded as the Greek school. It's regarded as SAHETI. And I think that that makes a very valuable statement. We have well over 26 different cultural groups at SAHETI. And the whole premise of the school is that anybody who buys into Hellenism is welcome. And so it's those Hellenic principles, those values, those virtues that are the foundation stone of most civilizations. It's courage, which we need, agape, which means love, respect, compassion, truth, ubuntu, and philotimo.
To recognize that there is a common humanity is so important, because the challenges of the day are not within our ethnic group or within our country, they are transnational, and we need to work together. And this is what I think the central message of SAHETI can be, if we can all really appreciate and absorb those values, which are both South African, African, and Hellenic.
Our aim at SAHETI is to create pupils who are able to produce the best version of themselves. Whatever that version is, we embrace it, we drive it, we recognize it, and we support it, so that they can go out and create a better version of the world.